Gary Clark, how are we doing, sir?
I'm good, mate. Yourself?
I'm pretty good, and today we're here to talk about the Elgato Game Capture HD60 Pro. Lovely little device, which Elgato were kind enough to send to us. Essentially, it's a PCI card, or PCIe card, that you put into the back of your PC. So it just slots on the motherboard underneath the graphics card or anything else if you've got a spare PCI Express port. And it will capture all of your footage from whichever games you happen to be playing at 1080p in 60 frames a second.
Nice.
So, yeah, it's a really nice bit of kit. I mean, Elgato previously had the Game Capture HD and the Game Capture HD60. They were USB devices, so they just sit dangling from your computer or your laptop or whatever you're using. You stick the HDMI in, HDMI out. There's no lag at all through to the TV. But when you use the software to capture the footage, there's about a 2-second delay.
Yeah.
What the HD60 Pro does is the fact that it's got the power of, obviously, running off a PCIe port. You've got a ton of bandwidth there. What that essentially does is it throws the footage directly into the software, and it's pretty much instant. There's no delay, there's no lag or anything like that. You can more or less, if you were that way inclined to try it, you can pretty much get away with playing the game through the software.
Okay.
That will I'll talk about it in a little bit, but essentially it doesn't work that well when you stream, because sometimes if the streaming gets delayed with the rendering, then it can cause a little bit of a delay. But even then, it's negligible compared to what there was before. So yeah, I mean, we'll get into it here. We've obviously got some footage up at the minute of Resogun. Now, what we've done here is we're basically comparing the Game Capture HD60 Pro, the original Game Capture HD, and the PS4's internal capture. So it just gives you an idea of the difference. I mean, it's fairly obvious from the get-go, like how different it is. The Game Capture, the HD60 Pro obviously does 1080p, 60 frames a second, and I mean the footage is gorgeous. There's no two ways about it. It doesn't have any like macro blocking. It doesn't have any compression artifacts or anything like that are noticeable from the raw footage. Much the same with the Game Capture HD, but obviously that does 1080p and 30 frames a second. Yeah. So the only real noticeable difference there is obviously in terms of the frame rate. But then you look at the PS4 footage, and it's it's massively noticeable, the difference. The PS4 captures at 720p and it does 30 frames a second. And it's quite heavily compressed as well sometimes, so you can see these macro blocks and the slight blur when you get into a busy scene. Yeah. So it's a good, the fact that the PS4 and the Xbox One have got these capabilities built in, it's a great feature to have. But if you're kind of doing more professional stuff, or you want the best quality possible, then using these capture kits is the best thing to do. We haven't had a chance to test out the HD60, which is the USB one that captures at 6 frames a second, but my understanding is it's just as good.
Yeah. Well, I've actually got the HD60.
Yeah.
And I use it all the time. Like I've been using Elgato products since the original Game Capture HD. And because I'm a Mac user, there's still some slight issues with the software. It was more so on the original Game Capture, but the HD60 it runs a lot better on my MacBook Pro than compared to the old software. So yeah, I love it. I just love the software. I think it's easy to use. The quality of the footage, again, it is very, very good. Obviously, if you're doing 1080p in 60 frames, the file sizes are huge, but you've got that sort of variation tool where you can keep the sort of file sizes down by using slightly worse sort of footage. They call it better, is it good, and best? Yeah,
there's good, better, and best, and I think there's varying degrees in between. But essentially, what that does, it still captures it at 1080p and 60 frames a second. It's just the bit rate of the file that's being captured. So obviously, the higher the bit rate, the closer you are to uncompressed captures. And I mean, really, the HD60 Pro, for what it is, it's probably as close to a professional grade bit of kit that you can get without spending, like, you know,
thousands,
hundreds and thousands of pounds. It's crazy. Obviously, there's, you know, there are some issues with HDCP, but you can turn that off, I believe. I think you can in the Xbox One. I know you definitely can in the PS4.
Yeah, you can. Yeah.
So you can turn off the HDCP for that, which will, you know, HDCP is fair enough. You can't just stick a Blu-ray in and rip, you know, a Blu-ray at a ridiculous bit rate, because that would be kind of unfair.
Yeah.
But I genuinely don't see any downside to the hardware itself. I mean, you mentioned the software. Personally, I've had some really good experiences, and I've also had some really bad experiences with the Elgato software.
Yeah, I know you had issues with the when you were streaming, right?
Yeah, that's essentially where it is. I mean, I did some of our Game Blast 2016 stream. I did some of that with the Game Capture software. It kind of worked for the most part, and then this was on my MacBook. So this is a 2011 MacBook Pro. So it's kind of, the machine's maybe getting on a bit, but it started to chug a little bit at a certain point, and it started to say, you know, that it can't render 30 frames, and it was just really slowly chugging.
Yeah.
To the point where I just had to stop, and I had to use the internal streaming methods on the consoles.
To be honest, mate, I think that's Mac. Being on a Mac, because I don't think they've ever optimized it properly for Mac. Yeah,
it's a bit of a shame. It is a bit of a shame. But if you're using a PC, I can't. Well, I had a problem when I was streaming using the PC software. I've actually got Elgato support kind of talking to me about it. So there's some discussions that are being had there. But essentially, I had everything ready. Capturing footage is fine. Like, you just hit record, it goes. You press stop, and it's there in its raw format, and then you can export it to an MP4 or whatever format you want. Yeah. If you want, you can throw it straight onto YouTube directly from the app, or from the software rather. It's really good. Like, in terms of the recording side of it, I can't fault it.
Yeah.
When it came to the streaming side, the problem was that essentially I was trying to offload all of the graphics processing,
right,
or all the streaming coding, onto my graphics card. And for some reason, my graphics card didn't quite like what it was doing, and it immediately crashed the software.
Okay.
Which was a little bit of a downer, because it led to a bit of a panicky few moments. Which, you know, it did. That's essentially what happened with our Quantum Break stream, where it got delayed. But I've since found that using third-party software like OBS, OBS can actually see the Game Capture HD60 Pro as a device.
Oh, so it actually detects it and does it? Oh.
So you can use that as a capture device. So basically, if you use OBS, you open it up, you choose the HD60 Pro, and there you go. It's available, and then you can do whatever you want with the overlays and stuff. And that seems to allow the graphics card to process it properly. So I'm not sure whether there's something not talking correctly between the Elgato software and the graphics drivers, but there's something not quite right there. But as I say, the support guys are aware of it, and to be honest, it seems like it's quite a niche issue. Obviously, with PCs, there's a billion different combinations around there. So
that's true, yeah. Because, like, essentially, I've never had any problems with the software, like, for me personally, but I've only been capturing. But I know people that have had issues with the software, so there's obviously, it needs to be streamlined slightly, I think. It's because it's quite sort of bloated in how much it's got inside it. There's so many options, so maybe there's some sort of streamlining process they need to go by. But I know, well, last time I heard, Mac is the worst version of it.
Absolutely.
Optimization. So
yeah, I'd recommend that if you're going to you know, if you're going to be capturing stuff, it's fine. Like, capturing stuff is really not a problem. But when it comes to the streaming side, using the USB one's probably not the best thing, because you've got that 2-second delay. But you've also got, like, the immediate reaction of your camera. So if you're streaming with a webcam, the camera will be on about 2 seconds before the video will be. But with the 60 Pro, that's not an issue because, as I say, it's instant. They call it instant Gameview, and it really is. Like I had a monitor set up next to my TV to just see like how quick the difference was, and honestly, it's almost imperceptible. Like you cannot see any delay.
That's awesome,
and it's really, really impressive. Like it's a hugely impressive bit of kit, and if you're looking at going into doing some video capture for video games, I can't fault it. The software is the area that lets it down a little bit, but again, that's mainly from my experience and this fairly sort of niche problem that I've had. But if you're willing to possibly use a third-party solution like OBS or like XSplit or something like that, it will see this as a device that you can use to capture the footage. So if you're willing to go that step, that's perfectly fine. And honestly, the hardware itself, it's really easy to install. You just pop it on the motherboard and then download the drivers from the Elgato website. And I think I was probably up and running between taking it out of the packaging and starting using it. I was probably up and running within about 5 minutes.
Nice. See, I wish I was a Windows user for that reason. I'm just mainly Mac. I do now and then sort of work on a Windows PC, but it's very rare because I don't even own one myself. But obviously the HD60 Pro is PC only, so I haven't got the option with that one. But it sounds fantastic, and the footage is like crazy good. So
so that's our review of the HD60 Pro. There will be a written review going up as well. But to be honest, I think we've said what we need to say here. It's a fantastic piece of kit, and really, if they can just tweak those software issues, it will be absolutely incredible. The live capture, like the live game view as they call it, is probably the best feature by a long, long way, because you've now got the ability to do that instant live stream and the instant reactions that you've not got this 2-second delay. You don't have to faff about with
editing and all that.
I mean, there is an option in a couple of third-party softwares where you can delay the camera input and stuff like that. But this is just you plug it in, you plug your HDMI in, your HDMI out, and off you go. That's essentially it. I can't really fault it all that much hardware-wise. I say software's
touch and go,
touch and go at times, but on the whole, it's an excellent product, and it gets our seal of approval here at NGP.
Definitely,
absolutely. Well, thank you very much for joining me, Gary, and thank you very much for watching, guys.
No problem.
We will be back soon with more videos and more streams and everything else which we can do powered by the HD60 Pro now. So expect to see a lot more footage coming up soon, and thanks for taking the time to watch this video. Cheers, guys. See you later.